In this first video, I want to address a question that I get asked frequently, and that is probably the most common question I hear at law school admissions events and so forth, and that is the basic question of what are top-tier law schools looking for? What do they want to see in your application? And often when I hear admissions officers and others answer the question, they emphasize things like, we want to know what you're interested in, or who you are, or what you're passionate about, or what makes you unique. And these are all true, but I think that that's not an adequate answer in the sense that when you apply to a top law school, you not only have to make an argument in favor of yourself, but you're also in a competitive zero-sum game where you're competing for a finite number of spots. And so I want to try to offer an answer to this question that I think will provide an accurate, realistic picture of what you're looking at, and also that will give you some guidance as you navigate the process and weigh competing choices. So the way that I would answer that question is that top law schools want you to be either the best or one of the best people in an area that they care about. So let's start with the latter half of that. What do they care about? And at the end of the day, top law schools are professional schools, but they're professional schools that have an intellectual interest in the law and the legal profession. So they're looking for people who can contribute in a meaningful way to sort of their school in the study and also the practice of law. So that could mean contributing while you're at the law school. They're interested in what you might do afterwards, and they're interested in the contribution that you'll make broadly to our society, especially in the legal profession. Now, the first part of it, which is they want you to be the best. And the way I would think about this is that there are objective and subjective components to looking at whether or not you're the best at something. The most important part of your application is the LSAT, and I think that provides you also with an area that provides the most objective metric of whether or not you're the best. There's an objective score. It's a standardized test that everyone takes. Everyone's on an equal playing field. And so the closer you can get to having a 180, the greater your likelihood is of winning, and the more you're doing to show the admissions officers that you're really one of the top people they're getting, and that you're really up to the task of competing at a top law school. And although getting a 180 is not going to guarantee that you get in, I mean, it certainly puts you within a relatively small echelon of people. Now, as you go from the LSAT to other components of law school admissions, I think you go from highly objective to more subjective. So when it comes to your GPA, there's an objective number here, and obviously having a 4.0 GPA counts for something. But they will also factor in where you went to college, what your field of study is, how difficult your course load is. So obviously a 4.0 in a hard science or engineering field at a top tier college is going to, with a full course load, is going to mean more than a 4.0 GPA in a easier field at an easier school. And then when you go from there, you start to get into more subjective areas. So with the letters of recommendation, yes, these are qualitative measures, but also the more renowned your professor is, that's probably going to count for something. I think where you have the most opportunity and the most discretion in proving to the law schools that you're really the top or one of the top people in an area you're competing is really in your extracurricular non-academic pursuits. And here I think there are basically two ways to navigate this. There's sort of a category of activities that do provide for objective measures, and where it is relatively easy to tell if you're at the top of this activity. So an example of a relatively objective area would be if you're competing in, say, college debate tournaments. And here there are rankings, there are different sort of competitions and so forth, and they can usually get a sense of whether or not you're, at a top level or whether you're a more sort of middling competitor. Another might be, if you're the editor-in-chief of a campus newspaper, there is sort of a certain hierarchy that gives them some sense of where you are and how much responsibility you have. But on the other end of how you can show them that you're the best at something, it's really by not competing at all, and it's by creating some kind of a unique area, doing something innovative, really being one of a kind, so that you're the best simply by virtue of the fact that you're the only one doing it. And an example of this might be if you if you really engage and pursue a certain intellectual area and break new ground where no one has. It might be an entrepreneurial activity where you really invent something or bring a product or service to the market that no one has thought about. It could be an artistic endeavor. It could be combining two different areas. So maybe you're doing something at the intersection of law and physics and music or something. It could be sort of something tied to your unique life story, which then you channel and sort of turn into something that really makes you a distinguishable and distinguished applicant. So what I would think about is, ask yourself, what can you be the best at? And this is going to require a lot of introspection, an assessment of the opportunities you have, etc. And then, once you sort of figure out what are the things that either you already are the best at or you have a reasonable shot at being the best at, you can then quickly disregard any activities or any sort of associations or whatever that aren't going to serve that interest. And if you can really sort of get the LSAT right, obviously show academically and through your letters of recommendation that you are a top student, and then figure out like one or two areas where you really can be the best at something, and something that the law schools care about, that's going to make you a really compelling applicant.